When the sun has set on a Friday night, bringing peace into your home, families will gather all around singing Shabbat Shalom. Everybody sing Shalom, Shalom. Shalom, shalom. It's a gift from God to put a smile upon your face. He's got the whole world in his hands, so obey his commands and you will know peace. Shalom, shalom, Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, my dear friends. Let's begin with a song. We're already outside greeting the Sabbath bride. Mizmor, mizmor, shir, shir leyom ha-Shabbat. Mizmor, mizmor, shir, shir leyom ha-Shabbat. Join me. Mizmor, mizmor, shir, shir leyom ha-Shabbat. Mizmor, mizmor, shir, shir leyom ha-Shabbat. The whole world is waiting, waiting for Shabbat. 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 Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Mizmor, mizmor, shir, shir leyom ha-Shabbat. 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 Ya la 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 la, ya 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 la 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 la. Lecha dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekabla Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom umevorach. So Shabbat is almost here, and we can take a very deep breath. Let's do it together, because taking a deep breath brings in the Ruach, the spirit of Shabbat. Let's do that together. Maybe one more time. Sometimes it's hard when we're spending a lot of time indoors to remember things like trees and leaves and mountains and grass and fire and the ocean and lakes and rivers and waterfalls and the sun and the moon and the stars. But I think it was Viktor Frankl who said that the secret to happiness is having a vivid memory for wonderful things and a vivid imagination for what will be. And so as the Shabbat is descending upon us, let's think about Adamah, the earth, the Shamayim, the heavens, Chom Ha'esh, the warmth of a fire, Tzil Hamayim, the ringing of the waters. To feel these things in our bodies and our spirits and our souls. And you don't necessarily have to be, let's say, at Sequoia, where the general Sherman tree is, to imagine a large and incredible tree. And you don't have to be down at the Dead Sea in Israel to imagine that warm water that is so salty that you can float in it. You can go there in your imagination. And so let's do that together now. Adamah v'shamayim, chom ha'esh, tzlil hamayim, ani margisha begufi, meruchi v'nishmati, Adamah v'shamayim. Well, Shabbat is certainly coming, and it's wonderful to say the Shema anytime. I mean, we can say the Shema when we wake up in the morning and before we go to sleep, and many people do. Throughout the centuries, many people have. But how about now as Shabbat is coming, singing Shema Yisrael together? Please join me. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God. Adonai is one. I want to speak to you a little bit about this week's Torah portion, which is actually the double Torah portion, Matot Maseh. The relevance is amazing. And, you know, the rabbis always said, Hafochba ve'afochba ve'hakol betochba, that if you turn Torah and turn it again, you're going to find that everything is in it. And it never ceases to amaze me that of the 54 Torah portions, how frequently it is that I find content in there that speaks to today, or this week, this month, and so forth. And, you know, people say, how can you study the Torah every week for a lifetime? Doesn't it get boring? But it never does, because even though the Torah stays the same, we change. And what goes on in society changes. And so we find new things in it, and we find ourselves in it. So in these Torah portions, much goes on, but I want to mention two aspects that are particularly relevant. One of them is that part of what's being determined in these Torah portions is what would be the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael. Remember that the Israelites had journeyed from Egypt all the way through the desert for 40 years, even enough time as the Torah portion actually indicates, so that a new generation would rise up to be the founders of this new land. Somehow our ancestors or God didn't want the nation founded by people with a slave mentality. They wanted the nation founded by a new generation who was more optimistic and positive and knew what it meant to be free and to ask questions. And they would be the proper founders of Israel or returners to Israel. So they're coming into or toward the land. And the question is being raised, should Israel include the east side of the Jordan River, or should it only include the west side of the Jordan River? And the boundaries are being determined. Quite remarkable when you consider that today, in 2020, with the newly created state of Israel since 1948, we are still discussing and trying to figure out what should be the borders of the land of Israel. And the Knesset, these very days, are debating that question. And God willing, there will be peace in that wonderful land. In any case, Israel's on our minds because the holiday of Tisha B'Av is coming soon in the next couple of weeks. And Tisha B'Av is the holiday when we commemorate the destruction of the temple. Now, what is the significance of that? Because when the Second Temple was destroyed in 70 of the Common Era, it wasn't just that we lost our temple and our one and only temple. Remember, back then, there weren't synagogues all over the place. There was the one temple in Jerusalem. And when that temple was destroyed, the Jewish people were dispersed all around, but especially into Babylonia. And thus began 2,000 years of exile, 2,000 years of Jewish homelessness that, thank God, ended in 1948 when Israel became a state. Again, much because of some of the efforts of you and your families who would put those coins in the pushkis to the Jewish National Fund and raise funds to recreate the state of Israel. And so Jerusalem is on our mind, Israel is on our mind, and it's coming out of this very Torah portion as well. We never cease to pray for peace in Jerusalem. Let's sing a modern favorite about Jerusalem, written by Naomi Shemer, the classic Israeli songwriter. Avir harim tzalul kayayim v'reach oranim nisa beruach ha'arbaim im kol pa'amonim uvtar demat ilan va'even shuya b'chaloma העיר אשר בדד יושבת ובליבה חומה ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור הלא לכל שירייך תניקינו ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור הלא לכל שירייך אהניקינו כינור. Well, it wouldn't be Shabbat if we didn't make the blessings. And since it's almost dinner time, how about if we make our way inside to make the blessings over the candles, the kiddush, the motzi. Let's go in. Please join me in the blessing over the candles as we light the light of Shabbat. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, shel Shabbat. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav במצוותיו, וציוונו להדליק נר, וציוונו להדליק נר, וציוונו להדליק נר של Shabbat. I can't help but think of my grandparents and their grandparents and their grandparents when I look at these Shabbat lights. And you know, what's interesting is there's no mention of Shabbat candles in the Torah. It was actually with the destruction of the temple and with the dispersion of the Jewish people that the rabbis created new rituals, including these Shabbat lights. So it's 2,000 years old or so. In Jewish time, that's not very old because the Torah was written about 3,500 years ago. But still, it connects us to the tradition. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'chel Shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Barchuni leShalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Sheichem leShalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's a blessing that talks about the angels who come into our lives on Shabbat, or who came into our lives at some time in the past, gave us a blessing, and then went on their way. And when I think of the angels right now at the Los Angeles Jewish Home, I think of you, our dear residents, who are being so patient during these challenging times. But I especially think of our staff, and the nurses and the dietary staff and the housekeeping and all of the other hands-on staff that, like angels, are there for you and are there for all of us to take care. And so I want to make this blessing on this particular Shabbat, not only to all of you, but for them as well. Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you. Yaher Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. May God's light shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God gaze upon you and your loved ones and give you the blessing of shalom, of peace, and especially of health. And we say together, Amen. You know, I mentioned some of the members of our staff, but there's so many more. There's the activity staff, there is maintenance staff, there are the people behind the scenes in the corporate level, there's IT, there are medical records, there are so many different departments. We have our hospice staff, there are so many wonderful people. We have our social workers, we have people who are focused on infectious disease, who are experts, and all kinds of scientists that take care of you. And I hope I didn't leave anybody out. So let's make that blessing and have it in mind for all of the members of our staff and all of our residents of the Jewish Home. All right, it's time for Kiddush. You ready? Yom HaShishi v'aychulu hashamayim v'aretz v'chol tzva'am. V'aychal Elohim b'yom hashvi'i melachto asher asa v'yishbot b'yom hashimochomoto asher asa. V'ayvarach Elohim et yom hashvi v'akadesh ato ki v'shavat mikomoto asher bara Elohim lasod. Savrin Rabbanan Rabotai, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Barei peri hagofen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, V'shabbat kodsho be'avahu v'ratzon hinchilanu, Zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit, Ki hu yom techila lemikra hekodesh, Zecher letziat Mitzrayim, Kivanu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta, Mikol ha'amim, V'shabbat kahodshecha, Be'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. Amen. L'chaim. Well, it's almost time for dinner. I know you're going to be getting those fantastic and delicious homemade challahs that are always made each week for you at the Los Angeles Jewish Home by our wonderful bakers. But for now, I'm going to pull out my challah, just one slice at this moment, and I'm going to make the motzi. Please join me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Well, from my home to your home, with love and a hope and prayers for healing and health and peace, I say to you, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
When the sun has set on a Friday night, bringing peace into your home, families will gather all around singing Shabbat Shalom. Everybody sing Shalom.